All right, let's talk about defense strategies against these things, right, as we move forward. And this, anytime I'm talking about incident response, you'll hear me tout this one. This is what I have in my head when I walk into an incident. Number one is preparation. Guess where we're at? And it's what we're doing today. Detect and analysis. How did we find it, right? How did we discover the insider threat? What did we do to contain it? How quickly did we work to eradicate it or mitigate it or recover from it, right? That's really the core. And then going back to detection to make sure it's not still ongoing. And did we capture all of it? Did we find every way that they were trying to hurt us or not? And then the most important one, and often overlooked, is the post-incident, lessons learned. How do we make sure this doesn't happen again? This, by the way, is from NIST. This is their computer security incident handling guide. But this is the graphic I have in my head when I walk into an incident. So this is what really works, and making sure that loop in the internal side is important, and also having that post-activity aspect are really, really critical as we move forward. All right, when you're building your team, number one, team leader. Number two, team lead number two. Why? Because number one is going to be busy. Communications lead, perhaps the most important of all of these, in my opinion. Why? Because they're knowing what to say and whom to say it to. And then when we talk about documentation and timeline lead, this is the person who's gathering the evidence as we go through it, because we often skip this part. And that means later on, we got to remember what we did when, how did we recover from it, and how do we prevent it in the future, right? So knowing what they could have touched when, writing it down, or what point of access, those kind of things, what credentials were compromised, really understanding it so that we can tell HR and legal should we have to, right? So really having, these are the key roles in any incident, and really understanding this process is really important, and going through it and making sure we do our best to maintain that through. Now, should backups be part of your incident response plan?
That's an easy one.
Yeah, yes, please. Yeah, and do it again, right? And then test it, because that's where we fall down, is 70% of the time our backups fail because we didn't test them. Yeah. And it was because we didn't anticipate something about it.
And I've said this one a few times on these webinars, but testing includes how long does it take to actually bring things back up online?
Absolutely.
Because the backups might be good, but if it takes you 3 weeks to actually use them, well, then that's something you want to know.
Yeah, it may still be viable, right? Using tape. I've seen it still, right? And it was effective, but it took us months to recover from it. That was a city. Proper offboarding policies, absolutely critical, because this is where we fall down. We forget to find that one access, right? So revoke access immediately. Unfortunately, people tend to do bad things when they're angry, right? So we want to make sure that they're not doing something just before they leave. Audit accounts. Ensure that no backdoors, no additional accounts were created by that person, and really understanding that so that we've got a scope of what's happening. Well, that requires us to go and audit all the access. And we should do this anyway, right? To make sure we're not leaving access there that should no longer be. Retrieving devices, right? If they're going to have access, well, we've got to make sure we get those physical devices back as soon as possible. And making sure that they also didn't create other ways in or install things we didn't know about, right? Shadow IT. Didn't work, so they went and bought their own printer, and that Wi-Fi access point wasn't strong enough, so they added one from China that came pre-hacked, right? That's unfortunately part of the insider threat. 73% of security professionals admitted to using unauthorized security as a service applications that were not provided by their company's IT team. Shadow IT. Why? Because they're trying to get something done and they thought it'd be more efficient, or they knew better, or whatever. Point is, we got to watch out for it because it's effective and it's happening. All right, how do we reduce costs? Privilege access management, PAM, and user training and awareness are shown to reduce the cost of insider threat with the greatest impact, right off the top. PAM can save an average of $5.9 million. That's amazing, right? That's a lot of savings, especially in our world where budgets are really tight. User training and awareness programs can save 5.4 million. So, okay, privilege access management and training, we just saved, let's see, 11.3 million. That's good. Awareness and monitoring reduce the cost by up to 4.3 million on average. So this is me, what we're talking about is how can we protect ourselves from the cost side of things? Well, this is how: training, access management, and awareness and monitoring. Okay, all things that are now required. This says we have to do them. Well, let's do them. All right, detection and prevention, implementing a proactive security strategy, implement threat detection, governance, and policy, right? So understanding the policy is really important. Institute least privilege, yes, yes, and yes. Utilizing MFA and strong password practices. Hopefully MFA is part of that, but it can also be separate. Delete idle or unused accounts as quickly as possible, immediately if possible. Conduct baseline network assessments, understanding what our risks are, what our vulnerabilities are, and then monitor for any anomalous behaviors. Employee threat detection tools, endpoint detection endpoint detection, really getting into there and understanding IT management tools, access, log analytics, really delving into how could we better protect ourselves from inadvertent as well as inadvertent attacks. Conduct employee cyber hygiene and security training over and over again, right? Till people get really tired of it. Well, then change up the training, but still do it. Review and update policies at least annually, especially your planning and your incident response plans, et cetera. Now a requirement. We just got to make sure we're doing it. And understanding adopting human risk management. What does that mean? Well, really looking to manage and reduce the risk of insider threats, initiating policies, and then educating, and then building a really positive security culture. Because it will help us if we're all working together, because we understand that there is risk. So together we can help mitigate it. It's absolutely the best way to go. And that always bodes well. Continuity of operations planning, or COOP plans, really important. This also means that we have to train on that plan, and we must have manual methods. It's not all digital, right? Partnering with sister organizations for support, sharing this information with them, and then considering our vendors as part of that plan and process. Prepare physical copies of critical documents so that we can maintain operations should we need to, and then also cyber insurance as a tool, not as a mandate that we must then pay the ransom, right? We want to fight that whenever possible. Well, how do we do that? Well, we have good backups, we have other methodologies, and most importantly, we have a good plan. And then what do we do with that plan? We test on it. We test it, we take it out, we update it at least annually. That's a new CGIS requirement. But it's always been part of the NIST plan, right? We must make sure that we also involve anybody, including vendors, and then we write down it, and then we communicate it, and then we test it, right? That's really the goal. It will help us be much more secure.